The hotel on Paseo de la Reforma woke up with that cold shine only polished marble nose. Mariela arrived before the traffic was fully awake. She changed in silence, tied her hair back in a tight ponytail, and put on her gloves as if preparing for a serious trade. On her cart, the blue and green liquids looked like small lagoons trapped in plastic. She knew exactly which one to use for each stain, as if reading a secret map on the floor. The reception staff greeted her with a distracted nod, a mix of habit and hurry. Mariela didn't mind. Anonymity made her move lightly. She had learned to walk close to the wall to listen without being noticed. Her routine was a precise choreography. Hallways, doors, elevators. A world that smelled of expensive coffee and foreign perfume. That Tuesday, a group of men in dark suits began passing by, scanning the room with their eyes before moving their feet. Someone had booked the Emerald Hall for a private meeting. The bosses ordered extra shine, fresh flowers, no noise. Mariela changed the water in the vases patiently, without looking up, only attentive to the way tension ran through the air like a tight rope. While polishing the edge of a table, she heard the whisper of two waiters near the half-open door. One said, almost laughing, "They say a real sheikh is coming with bodyguards and all." The other lowered his voice, saying the man didn't trust anyone who didn't speak his language. Mariela kept polishing. The cloth moved in slow circles, and for a moment, her gaze drifted to the window. The city's sky was heavy, lead gray, a sign of rain. The floor supervisor, Mr. Ortega, appeared with his list and urgency. "Mariela, finish here and move to the main hallway. Not a single footprint, got it? And please, don't stay around when they arrive." He said it without harshness, but without really looking at her. She nodded, put away the spray, folded the cloth like an envelope, and pushed the cart into the corridor. In the hallway, silence was so clean that any step felt like disrespect. Mariela stopped in front of the long mirror and, with an automatic gesture, fixed a dry spot on the edge. She thought of Javier, her son, who at that hour must have been arriving at secondary school in Itacalco. She remembered the improvised breakfast, the glass of warm milk, the jacket with the crooked zipper. She had promised him to stop by a store after her shift. Today for sure, she told herself, not knowing if she was speaking to him or to the promise itself. A burst of radios announced the arrival. Men in suits, invisible earpieces, rehearsed movements. Behind them, a man with dark skin and a well-kept beard, an impeccable tunic under a dark jacket that fell on him like a soft shadow. The Sheikh. He walked unhurriedly, but with a presence that pushed the air around him. The hotel manager walked at his side, smiling with tight lips. "Welcome, sir. The hall is ready." He didn't answer. His eyes seemed to measure the temperature of every face. Mariela pressed herself closer to her cart, bowed her head, yet couldn't resist lifting her eyes slightly when they passed. The Sheikh stopped, not in front of the manager, but before her cart. He observed the order, the bottles, a rag hanging like a whip. The silence lasted long enough for Mariela's heart to pound twice strongly. He said something, a short phrase, in a language that to everyone else sounded like a meaningless murmur. Ortega stepped forward nervously. "Sir, this way to the hall." But the Sheikh didn't move. He repeated the phrase, now clearer, looking at the folded cloth. The manager apologized in English, promising a translator in a few minutes. Someone was already typing on a phone looking for an app. The bodyguards formed a discreet wall. The hallway shrank. Mariela felt in her mouth the old taste of mint tea, as if she were sitting at another table in another time. It was a sensory flash, almost a mistake of the body. She didn't want to raise her hand, didn't want to exist more than necessary. but the Sheikh's phrase had fallen inside her like a key recognizing its lock. She squeezed the cloth between her fingers, swallowed, and then, without moving from her spot, with a low voice so as not to intrude, she opened her mouth. The word, spoken with an unexpectedly soft accent, hung in the air just as the door of the Emerald Hall swung open from inside. Someone pale rushed out and whispered something into the manager's ear that instantly erased her smile. Mariella, with the syllable still warm on her tongue, had no time to finish the phrase. The manager looked at her for the first time, as if truly seeing her, and the Sheikh, without changing his expression, turned his head toward her. The hallway was filled with a silence heavier than marble. The manager tried to regain composure, but the Sheikh's eyes remained fixed on Mariella, as if trying to confirm something only he understood. Mariella felt a sudden heat in her face, squeezed the rag in her hand, and this time let the words come out complete, clear, with that slow rhythm her grandmother always used when telling old stories. "Welcome. May your path here bring you peace," she said in soft Arabic. Without raising her voice, the echo of the phrase ran through the hallway like a strange vibration. The bodyguards glanced at one another discreetly, and one of them even allowed a half-smile of surprise. The Sheikh didn't smile, but in his eyes a brief spark lit, like someone finding a piece once thought lost. The manager babbled in English, trying to regain control. "Her! You understand her?" she asked, unable to hide her disbelief. The Sheikh nodded slowly and replied in his language, this time looking only at Mariella. His words were longer, deeper. Mariella listened attentively, lowered her gaze for a moment, and then also answered in Arabic with a short phrase that seemed to hold an intimate meaning, inaccessible to the rest. A murmur spread among the few employees watching from a distance. Ortega frowned uncomfortably, as if that interaction were breaking an invisible rule. The Sheikh, without adding more, walked toward the hall accompanied by his bodyguards. Before entering, he slightly turned his head and looked at her one last time. That gesture carried no judgment nor courtesy, only a kind of silent recognition. Mariella took a deep breath, trying to steady her trembling hands. The smell of freshly ground coffee drifted in from the lobby cafe, but she sensed another older scent, a mix of incense and dry wood. She forced herself to continue her work, though she knew curious eyes would follow her the rest of the morning. While changing the elevator carpet, she again heard the waiters' voices. "How on earth does she know how to speak like that?" whispered one. "Who knows? Maybe she worked somewhere strange," replied the other, with a tone that mixed suspicion and admiration. Mariella didn't turn her head. She preferred the weight of her own thoughts to anyone's gaze, because if there was something she didn't want, it was to explain the origin of those words. At least, not yet. That morning, as a fine drizzle began to fall over the city, Mariella knew that what had happened in that hallway wouldn't easily be erased, and what she couldn't yet imagine was that the Sheikh wouldn't let it remain just a curious moment. Beyond the doors of the Emerald Hall, he was already giving the first order that would bring her before him again much sooner than she wished. Rain beat softly against the lobby's tall windows like a drum. Mariella thought that sound would allow her to work without being disturbed, but it wasn't so. She had barely finished drying the entrance floor when Mr. Ortega appeared with a tense frown, as if carrying a message he didn't want to deliver. "Mariella, the Sheikh wants to see you now." She left the rag in the bucket and felt her throat close. "For what?" she asked, trying to sound neutral. "I don't know. The manager says it's a special request, and I can't say no." So, Mariella dried her hands on her apron and walked behind Ortega toward the Emerald Hall. Each step on the plush carpet felt heavier than the last. At the door, two tall men gave her a quick inspection, not as a threat, but as a mechanical protocol. Then, one opened the door and gestured for her to enter. The interior was lit with a warm glow that contrasted with the gray street outside. On the main table were small steaming cups and assorted dishes. The sheikh sat upright, his hands resting on the arms of the chair. The manager stood beside him with a measured smile, as if every gesture were calculated to impress. "This is Mariella, sir," said the manager, then stepped back. The sheikh spoke in Arabic, slowly, as if testing each word. Mariella listened carefully. It wasn't a complex question, but the tone carried a weight of formality that made her sit straighter. She responded with the same calm one uses to address a respected guest, without hesitation. A faint murmur was heard behind her. One of the assistants took notes. The sheikh nodded and, with a gesture, indicated that she sit across from him. The manager seemed uneasy. "Sir, perhaps we can bring the official translator," she suggested in English. "No," interrupted the sheikh, without looking away from Mariella. She sat down. The aroma of cardamom coffee wrapped around her senses, and suddenly she felt an echo of another time, of a place she had sworn never to revisit, not even in thought. He began asking short questions about her work at the hotel, how long she had been there, where she had learned the language. Mariella replied without giving more than necessary, but the curious gleam in the sheikh's eyes did not fade. At one point, he said something that made her hands tense on her knees. It wasn't a threat, but it was a clear sign he knew more than he appeared. She swallowed and avoided his gaze. The meeting ended with a simple, "Thank you, I will call you again." Mariella left with her heart racing. Ortega waited outside but didn't ask anything, perhaps out of fear, perhaps out of respect. In the hallway, as she returned to her routine, Mariella hoped that would be the end of it. Yet, by the afternoon, the manager stopped her abruptly. "The sir wants you in the hall tomorrow first thing. He says it's important." And in that moment, Mariella knew what was at stake was no longer just her job. The next morning dawned cold, with a low fog slipping between Reforma's skyscrapers. Mariella arrived at the hotel with her stomach tight. She had barely sipped a bit of coffee at home. While changing in the employees' locker room, she overheard two co-workers gossiping that the sheikh would remain at the hotel for several days. One, with a mocking tone, said that surely the polyglot lady was already serving as his free interpreter. Mariella said nothing. At exactly 8, the manager was waiting beside the Emerald Hall. She led Mariella inside without explanation, and this time Mariella noticed more people. Men in dark suits, 2 women in elegant dresses, and an official translator standing with a folder. The sheikh greeted her with a slight nod and motioned for her to come closer. Then, in front of everyone, he spoke to her in Arabic again, ignoring the translator completely. "Are you willing to help me today?" he asked. Mariella hesitated a moment, then replied, "If it is within my possibilities, yes." He explained that he needed to convey precise instructions to his service team at the hotel, and that he trusted her more than any of the translators available. The manager nodded, trying to appear as if this were normal, but her discomfort betrayed itself in the tension of her lips. For nearly an hour, Mariella translated instructions, watching the discipline and precision with which the sheikh handled every detail. Several hotel employees looked at her with a mix of surprise and resentment. Inside, Mariella felt how a door she had kept closed for years was slowly opening. At the end of the meeting, when everyone was leaving, the sheikh offered her a cup of tea and told her something that made her pause. "Your pronunciation isn't from someone who learned in a course, but from someone who has lived among us." Mariella's heart skipped a beat. She kept her composure and only replied, "That was a long time ago." The sheikh didn't insist, but his eyes seemed to say he wouldn't be satisfied with that answer. That afternoon, while cleaning the executive floor hallway, she overheard a conversation that froze her blood. Two supervisors spoke softly but loud enough for their words to reach her. They say they're just using her to impress the sheikh, but once she's no longer useful, they'll fire her. Mariella kept mopping as if she hadn't heard, but those words cut into her chest. The next day, in front of everyone, came the moment she thought she had earned a place, only to discover the hardest blow was still ahead. That Friday, the hotel was busier than usual. An exclusive event organized by the sheikh would gather businessmen and officials in the Emerald Hall. From early morning, Mariella was called to collaborate as an interpreter, but this time before a much larger audience. The manager greeted her with a different smile, broader, almost condescending, like someone showing off an unexpected asset. Keats. Mariella stood discreetly at the sheikh's side, translating each instruction and formal greeting with precision. The guests looked surprised, and some even quietly congratulated her. "What talent, miss! Your pronunciation is incredible." For the first time in years, she felt her steps resonated in a place where she had always been invisible. During a break, the sheikh approached her and in Arabic said, "You are more valuable than they think." Mariella lowered her gaze, trying to hide the pride burning in her chest. That day, she thought, maybe I am recovering something I thought I had lost: respect. At the end of the event, as the last guests departed, the manager approached with several hotel executives. One, holding a glass of wine, said loudly, "Mariella, today you were essential. The hotel is grateful." She barely had time to smile when the manager, still smiling for the others, handed her a white envelope. "Here is a small incentive for your support. You can leave now." Mariella took it, confused. The envelope weighed less than she expected. When she opened it, she found just a couple of bills, as if her work had been a casual favor and not a professional task. Gratitude had been reduced to a tip. "But I thought," she began to say. "Don't worry, Mariella," interrupted the manager quietly. "You've done your part. Starting tomorrow, the official translator will take over." She felt as if the ground had shrunk under her feet. All the brightness of the afternoon, the looks of respect, the sheikh's words, crumbled in an instant. As she left the hall, she heard a couple of employees laughing behind her. "See? Even cleaners dream big." Mariella walked to the locker room without responding. She put the envelope away without counting the money. That night, on the bus back to Itacalco, she stared out the window and let the city blur with the rain-soaked lights. She had tasted a moment of recognition only to have it torn from her hands. What she didn't know was that, at that very moment, someone else was already making plans to put her back in front of everyone. And this time, nothing would be the same. 2 days later, Mariella was working in silence on the executive floor when the hallway phone rang. It was Mr. Ortega's firm voice. "The sheikh wants to see you. Emerald Hall, now." Mariella hesitated. After the humiliation, she didn't want to face those people again. But she obeyed. She walked through the corridors, each step feeling like a small battle. When she arrived, the hall door was open. There was no event, just the sheikh seated at a long table, accompanied by 2 older men and a woman wearing a light veil. The manager wasn't there. "Sit down, please," said the sheikh, this time in slow but correct Spanish. Mariella sat with her hands clasped on her lap. He looked at her calmly, and then spoke in Arabic. "I know who you are." The air seemed to grow denser. Mariella tried to respond, but he continued. 15 years ago in Alexandria, you worked in the university library. I remember your Mexican accent and the way you helped students and travelers understand old texts. I was one of them." Her skin prickled. That part of her life was buried. She had returned to Mexico after an episode she never wanted to explain, a silent goodbye that left her with nothing but a suitcase and a handful of memories. "I looked for you," added the Sheikh, "not to expose you, but because you helped me when I had no name or wealth. That time, you gave me more than you could imagine." Mariella could barely hold his gaze. Her voice broke. "And now, why are you looking for me?" The Sheikh smiled without arrogance. "Because I need someone of absolute trust for a cultural project in my country, and that person is you." The words hit her like a mixture of vertigo and relief. All the weight of invisible years of anonymous work suddenly faced an offer that could change everything. But alongside that emotion, Mariella felt a knot in her stomach. Accepting would mean opening a chapter of her life she had sworn to keep closed. And there were secrets in that history that could hurt more than any disdain. She didn't yet know if what the Sheikh was offering was a way out, or the beginning of a new risk. The rest of the day, Mariella couldn't concentrate on her work. As she changed sheets or filled buckets, the Sheikh's phrase echoed in her head, "That person is you." He hadn't said when or how, but the mere possibility of leaving, of abandoning the anonymity of the hotel, opened a horizon that both scared and attracted her. The news, however, didn't take long to spread. By mid-afternoon, the manager summoned her to the office. She was accompanied by a couple of executives and the official translator, who looked at Mariella with a mix of discomfort and resentment. "Mariella, we've been informed that Mr. Al-Rashid wants to hire you for a personal project. I must remind you that any agreement with high-profile guests has to go through us," said the manager, in a voice that pretended cordiality but dripped control. Mariella stayed calm. "It's a proposal I haven't accepted yet." "I hope you don't do so without authorization. It would be harmful to your future here," added one of the executives, dropping the threat like a fragile ornament on the table. The conversation ended without clear agreements, but with an obvious message. If she went ahead, the hotel would make sure to close its doors to her forever. That night, walking the damp streets on her way home, Mariella wondered if she could truly risk her only stable income. Javier, her son, was in his adolescence, and any drastic change could affect him. Yet, she also thought about what the Sheikh had told her. "You helped me when I had no name or wealth." The next day, the Sheikh asked to see her again, this time in the lobby, in full view of everyone. Al-Rashid explained in slow Spanish that the project was to organize and preserve a collection of historical manuscripts, and that he trusted her not only because of her language, but because of her integrity. "I'm not asking you to decide now," he said, "but don't let others decide for you." The eyes of half the hotel staff were on them, and Mariella understood that whether she accepted or not, her life in that place had already changed forever. From then on, everyone who passed her in the halls looked at her differently, some with curiosity, others with open hostility. And although she hadn't yet made a decision, the rumor that the cleaning lady was leaving with the Sheikh spread like wildfire. Mariella knew she couldn't keep that balance for long. Sooner or later, she would have to choose, and either option would come at a price. The morning she was supposed to give her answer dawned clear, with sunlight flooding the hotel's windows as if trying to erase the tension of the past days. Mariella arrived early, not to work, but to fulfill what she knew would be her final act there. The Sheikh was waiting at a table in a secluded part of the restaurant, a dark leather folder before him. There were no visible bodyguards, no executives, no manager. just 2 steaming cups of tea and a silence charged with expectation. "Have you decided?" he asked in Arabic, with a calm that didn't pressure her but also left no room for evasions. Mariella took a deep breath. "Yes, I accept, but on one condition. My son will come with me." The sheikh nodded without hesitation, opened the folder, and showed her the contract documents along with the arrangements for her and Javier's transfer. "I want you to begin in a month. You'll need time to close everything here." When they rose to leave, they crossed the lobby. The manager, speaking with a guest, fell silent as soon as she saw them pass. Her eyes hardened, but Mariella didn't look away. There was no resentment, certainty that the place no longer defined her. That afternoon, in the employees' locker room, she stored her uniform for the last time. Some co-workers quietly congratulated her. Others didn't even look at her. Before leaving, Ortega approached and murmured, "I never thought you'd leave like this, but I'm glad." Mariella walked to the bus stop with a lightness she hadn't felt in years. When she arrived home, she found Javier doing his homework. She handed him an envelope with the documents and, smiling in a way she could barely contain, told him, "Start practicing your Arabic." That night, as the city lit up, Mariella thought of all she had left behind. The invisibility, the humiliation, the weight of a past she had kept hidden. And for the first time in a long while, she felt that what lay ahead wasn't an escape, but the beginning of her true path.